Can you see all the snow in the background?
Yes. All right. Welcome to this episode of Better Call Saul. Hey, Saul, how are you today?
I'm good. Merry Christmas. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Happy New Year. Rachel, how are you today?
Good, guys. Merry Christmas.
Good.
Happy New Year.
Yep. So today we're going to talk about, should real estate agents have side hustles? Now, I feel like especially, this came about because we were talking about it's the new year, it's the time for planning. A lot of people either made tons of money during COVID or they lost tons of money during COVID. And so they're kind of looking at their business. So why don't you create some context for us about why we're asking this question and what a side hustle or extra business, what does it mean?
Yeah. So again, I take offense with the word side hustle. It's really, should somebody who sells real estate have more arrows in their quiver when
Okay.
they're delivering professional
income.
when they're delivering professional services to a client base. And so if you want to narrow your client base to only selling residential real estate to people, you can call yourself a real estate professional.
Right.
And you are.
Right.
And you can do 200 transactions a year with a team, or 500 transactions, or 12 transactions. I know some people over the years that have do five transactions, do it better than many agents, do it well, have a very loyal customer base. So, and they do other things.
I just think though, if you do too many things, it can dilute your primary profession.
Well, it can. So you want to make sure that anything you do adds to instead of dilutes your efforts. And so
give me an example. What do you mean?
Well, so my practice, when I was selling real estate, everybody was afraid that the big companies, the big Wall Street companies, were going to buy up all the real estate companies, and they all created real estate companies, and they all got into the business, and Sears, and it was the idea of combining financial services and real estate, because you could build a giant database and you knew what people need. This was an old
insurance companies are in the real estate business too. Big insurance.
Prudential. Well, Century 21 was purchased by Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. I think the year was 1980. So this whole thing, there's all history to this, right?
Yeah.
But the idea was there was a more efficient way to deliver related services.
Okay.
To people. Now, and we know that we've got these barriers and walls in real estate. You can't do this, you can't have title, you can't, right? And within the real estate transaction. Right. But there were other ways that that money that Wall Street was thinking about jumping into the real estate industry. Well, that's the way I looked at the real estate industry when I was in it, and I saw that as a threat. So I figured out ways through people I observed to increase the money that I can make from a customer. Today we will call it like ARPU, average revenue per unit, right? And so, and I would say to people, the hardest thing I do in real estate is prospect. I have to spend all this time prospecting. I have to do everything, and particularly if you're new, you spend all this time, and you don't know what's productive and what's not productive, right? And so you're doing all the, and then at the end, you trickle out, you get 1 sale, 2 sales, and you get better at this. And so prospecting is a time-consuming, expensive. And the day I see the whole, and that's another conversation, lead generation and paying for leads and how that works. We had relationship generation, other ways that you would create prospects. And then so I got this idea watching what was happening that, I was a good salesman, that I could sell people the biggest thing in their life, and that I had to gain the trust and confidence to handle the biggest transaction of people's life. And if I could do that, then I wouldn't see them for 5 to 8 years if I could figure out way.
And now it's longer.
Well, yeah. So now I won what was important, trust and confidence. And it's still about trust and confidence. I have the trust and confidence. And now I thought, if I can offer them other related services, I can transfer this personal property that I have, right? This trust, and I can sell as long as I can learn about it, and I can learn about it well, and I can provide a good service, because I'm going to expand what I offer to people.
What do you think are the areas that now, as real estate agents, we should be concerned with, that we can expand into what services?
Yes,
because like we still made a point before we were talking, like there's some that make no sense, right?
Yeah, well, there's some that, we talked about this. So, and I'm not talking about, when I say should you have a side hustle, my answer is absolutely you should. What that means is, should you be looking at other ways to generate revenue through your customer base that aligns with your expertise and that aligns with your
like what are some examples
today?
Yeah, like I would think like one of my I guess one of mine is like rental properties. Like that makes sense.
Well, yeah, so that's what we expanded. We got a property management company.
Mhm.
Property management company, beautiful because we got paid. Oh, and I hear all the arguments. I don't want the risk. I don't want that risk. So I was a brokerage firm. We had Arizona Mission Insurance. We did property management. It gave us not only a consistent revenue stream in the good market and the bad market, it also gave us future listings. So every time we got a property management account, if we worked it right, we had a potential future listing. So we were actually building an inventory.
But if
by
you are
providing-
thinking of getting a property management company, please call me first. I will tell you
Yeah.
the pros and cons.
Well, and I had people follow me.
What
I
not
actually-
to know.
So I did this for years, and we did it where, we never had more than maybe 500 doors the way we defined it.
Kind
And then
of
we
a
would,
lot.
we would sell, 18 unit, 10 unit, 15 unit. We had gotten, we sold houses, condos, we sold houses, we sold apartment 4 units. All right. We worked up and we built a client base of people. And you know what, later on, at year 15, year 16, year 17, it wasn't about doing 200 transactions a year.
Right.
If you could do $1 million, and $1 million is a lot of money. If you could do $1 million transaction and a $700,000 transaction and a 400, if you could do like 5 or 6 at that magnitude, you made a lot of money, particularly if you had ancillary services.
Okay.
so-
Like,
Well, for me, it was financial. I get into financial planning. So if people were asking me all the time, they'd say, okay, one of the reasons they bought real estate was so they could get the tax advantage of it. So I had part of what the expertise is. Oh, I can never give tax advice. I didn't give tax advice. I knew the tax laws. I knew how the tax laws applied to the real estate. I could give them an example of how the tax laws applies to the real estate.
and you had licenses, right? Like your series.
At that time, just a real estate license.
Oh, okay.
And I thought of, they ask me this all the time. I don't charge for it. I help them find it. I think since they're asking me, and sometimes real estate's not appropriate. Early on, it was like real estate only. Don't put your money, right? But I met some people who were financial planners, and they actually showed me that there's a reason to have a more diversified base of assets, right? And I started learning about that, and I could see that was right. So I thought, look, I already got these people's trust. If I can sell them a house, an apartment building, they're going to ask me about gold and silver and mutual funds. If I know about it, I can tell them about it. Now
But you weren't making any income off of that, or you were?
Yeah, well, at that time, how do you get income? Right, we got to put a plan together.
Right.
Okay, and I did. I have to get licensed. How long is it going to take to get a Series 7 securities license? A couple of years. How long is it going to take to get a Series 24? How's 63? How long is it going to take to get an insurance license? Why? I don't want to sell insurance, but what if I referred to another professional in there, right? So I built a financial planning practice because my philosophy was a house is part of your financial future. It's the most important part of your financial future.
Right.
So that was then. This is now. What should we do now as we look for side hustles? No, as we look for in a changing world where commissions are going to continue to be compressed, where we're going to have to do more with less. How do we maximize our efficiency on dealing with our clients? And that leads us to, we put a plan together because a plan will help us go from vision and mission to strategic objectives, which will lead us to tactical. See, some people came to the difference between strategic and tactical. And from a tactical position, we can look at the tasks.
Like the
once we get tasks, we can assign accountability and timelines, and we can actually then manage a business in a much more effective way, instead of the way oftentimes a lot of people that when they get into real estate, they manage it based on what in my day, it was when the phone rang.
This
right?
is like, well, this is more, like, how do I feel? Like, what is, not really strategic.
Not strategic at all. And so, people need to sit down at this time of year and know they're in a changing world. Also know it's probably going to be a great real estate year in 2022, right? Everything's lining up for it to be a great real estate year, but we're still going to have major problems. We're going to have problems with housing affordability. Right? We're going to have problems with climate change. We're going to have problems with social equity. All these things are going to happen. And it takes me back to what a real estate professional's real job now is to get into and understand land use and start looking at what happens when funding goes to different areas to change land use, and look at transportation, how transportation affects land use. And then look
But
at
how can that be, like, how can we incorporate, if we have like an interest in learning more about that, and as real estate agents, how can we make that like an additional stream of revenue?
Yeah, so I think they'll take the last thing of that piece, and that is by understanding those pieces I just mentioned, knowing how they affect value.
Okay.
Because they all will have an effect on value.
Sure.
right? And so now it's looking at different pieces and bodies of knowledge.
Yeah,
you
because
know,
like if the world changes to where it's like more of where we can already tell it's changing to become more walkable, right? Like they're making, it seems like the plan
no,
is
you're
to
right.
make
You're
things
right.
more walkable, more multi-use.
It's been
So
going on
then-
for years.
Yeah, well, right, but it's like coming to fruition. All this stuff takes a long time, right? So if you know that, then it will affect the value of maybe some of the condos. Maybe you need to learn more about being downtown condos.
No, exactly. You have
Yeah.
to expand what looks important to you. Because
Mhm.
I always said that a realtor's role was to put the transaction into the context of the customer's life.
Okay.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to put the purchase into the context. If you're really a real estate professional, you're not selling them a house.
No.
You're trying to put them, the house purchase, the transaction that happens 1 to 5 days, whatever many times it happens, right, in their lifetime, into the context of their life. That's the value that you bring.
Absolutely.
Now, that in and of itself might not be enough to pay you and keep you in business. So there are other things that will make you better at the first mission if you look for them. And one of them today is understanding land use, which fortunately for all of us goes back to what realtors stand for, which is under all is the land. And it's wise utilization and making people stakeholders in the system and the widest degree of land ownership and effective land ownership, and having an understanding that when changes are made in your community, you might not see the result for 30 or 40 years, but it's underway. And you're supposed part of your role in the future as a realtor is to be able to take the message to the consumer that doesn't see all of that. Now, how do you earn compensation around it? I think if you take the right message, you gain trust. So when you say, compensation is not necessarily currency, what is that worth anyway? That's another conversation, right?
Mhm.
So it's trust. And so what are the things you do to build your bank of trust? Because no matter which way the industry goes, that bank of trust you can take with you. And that's why you see nurses become realtors. And when they do, what do they take with them? The people who they knew through nursing who trust them. School teachers become realtors. And when they do, what do they take with them?
Yeah.
The trust that they gained as a school teacher, right? And so you can look at all these people that tend to do well in real estate in general, right? And you'll see that often because real estate's not a first-time career for most people, at least never used to be. It was always a second career, a third career, a fourth career. So to jump into it cold was different than somebody jumping into it that had relationship capabilities. So that's another thing. Being able to relate to people, understanding better how to relate, understanding how to relate online, understanding what your internet presence is, what it can mean to other people, knowing how other people are going to utilize the technology. So there's many of these things that I think are going to be available to us in 2022. And you go back to that whole piece of the person who wants to borrow money, being able to get in direct touch with the lender without that middle person. Because what happens when a loan is then placed and all the people that had to be involved where the loan was placed and check the property and check the appraisal, and we're going to get to a point, believe it or not, where the buyer will already be totally qualified for a certain amount of money and all the properties will be qualified too.
Right.
And a loan can take place simultaneously. And then just boom, and it'll happen overnight. And now I hear the argument, oh, people don't like that. Nobody would ever do that. Yeah, nobody would ever buy cryptocurrency. Nobody in the first place, nobody would even get on the internet, right? I mean, so there's a lot of things people tell us that people will never do. And I think take a look at generational marketing and I even forget what generation comes after the millennials at this point. There's the post-millennial 1, post-millennial 2. What are they going to,
I think like to your point, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is, okay, looking at your sphere and your circle and your customers and really looking and say, okay, what else are they asking me about? And finding those commonalities. Like for you, it was the financial planning piece. For us, I imagine, especially if we're working with some younger buyers, it could be, I think fractional housing would be an important thing to know.
There's many new ways, right? That we don't.
Right. And then you can figure out the income, additional streams of income from there, rather than going out to, Rachel had mentioned earlier, rather than going out to like sell Mary Kay or sell Tupperware or whatever.
Jennifer, you're right on the money. That's exactly right. There are, we talked about this, there are many ways now that real estate can be divided up. And so because of blockchain because of security, because transactions, the number of transactions goes from a transaction cost of this to a transaction cost of this.
Right.
Because technology allows that to happen now. You can start to divide and create brand new opportunities in real estate. And
Well, the transaction cost will be smaller, but the customer acquisition cost will be higher. Do you think?
Well, I think that what you've got, you've got this whole array of people selling real estate today is more than selling a house, because now you can buy a piece of the mineral oil and gas rights of a property in Montana. You can buy a part of the everything's cash flow or revenue based, right? You can buy a part of a timber forest in a fractionally, right? So
you can also buy property on a virtual reality.
And you can also do that, right? So there's all these new ways to think about real estate. And if you're a real estate and know that consumers, so there's a site, like them or not, whatever, called Picasso. And Picasso is Spencer Rascoff, the CEO of Zillow for many years, one of the early guys at Zillow, created Picasso. And what Picasso does is they go in and buy luxury second homes, and then they find a buyer that wants to buy half of it, and then they sell the other half.
It's a timeshare.
Right? Yes, that's the first thing everybody says, and they'll tell you no. And it's legally it's held in an LLC, so there are differences. We don't want to get into it, but
it's fractional housing.
It's fractional, right? And there are many ways you can do this, and ways you couldn't do before because there were violations of security laws, and they're not anymore. So you know that if these companies are funded and they have and there's advertising, that your customers are going to hear about it. And if some of these things might be good for your customers and some of them might not be, but if you're a real estate professional, you want to be able to tell them, and some of these things do pay, right? So it's something like Picasso, probably they're a real estate brokerage, I think, and they probably pay referrals or some kind of compensation. So now as a realtor, I figured out another way by joining another network.
A lot of people are nervous about violating RESPA when they do stuff like that.
Well, they ought to look into it and make sure that they're comfortable that they're not, and then move forward, right?
Right.
And right, because people can have all kinds of excuses or reasons for why they don't want to do something. But I can personally tell you about some companies like that get funded the way they do. Typically, they paid a lot of money to get legal advice to be able to do it the way they want to do it. And my partner, John Riley, wrote the book, The Language of Real Estate. And he and I, back in the day, it was hard to find other people that would actually sit down and talk real estate with you. Right. And so he and I have had many, many real estate conversations over the years. And we talk like you, Rachel, right? Teach this stuff. And we would have to look at this and say, well, how does it fall into this? How do they avoid the subdivision laws? How do they avoid the subdivided map act, subdivisions law? How do they get around the map act? What are the new laws that give the capability to create these new ownership opportunities for people who are interested in real estate? Now, if I'm a real estate professional, I got to know about that.
Absolutely. That's where your value to your existing client base comes too, is when they ask you about these things that they've just heard about or that they see on the news or hear somebody talking about, you having the knowledge to be able to answer those questions in a professional manner.
And if
but
your competition can't, then it's a differentiator, right?
Absolutely.
If your competition can't answer, like if your competition kind of shines it on, so you got to look at it as an opportunity to demonstrate expertise, because demonstrating 100%. Expertise builds trust and confidence.
Absolutely.
So what a great opportunity to demonstrate expertise when my client asks me a question about something I know a lot about.
Yeah.
I hate it when they ask me a question about something I don't know anything about.
Well, and I think it's important to go find out more about things that you're interested in and dive deep into that. But I mean, kind of back to the original question, sometimes that stuff can take a long period of time before it begins to generate additional revenue for you as an agent. What are some other ways that are maybe a little bit more low-hanging fruit to generate? Because
you could be a bartender at night.
Right. As long as you're talking about real estate, I think that could be a way to lead generate.
You could argue that you could maybe lead generate as a bartender, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you, the first lead that I got to sell a piece of real estate, I was getting out of the Navy. So I was a lieutenant in the Navy. I was pending medical separation because I had a medical problem, kidney stones, and you couldn't be on warships if you had kidney stones, right?
No,
so I'd already,
not a good place.
I was being exited out of 10 years, right? And I was going out. And so in the time that I was working through this medical process, I was on a staff, and there was this E5. If you know what E5 is, right? So in the military, it's from when you're first, like the very lowest pay grade is E1, E2, E3, E4. It goes up to like E10.
Okay.
Right. So this guy was an E5. Only he worked. His wife didn't work because most wives didn't work then. And he had 2 children. And I was still a naval officer, and we were out on a small boat one day. He was a coxswain. He's driving the boat, and we're talking real estate to him because I just got my real estate license. And we start talking, and sure enough, I was working part-time. I hung my license at a Century 21. I got this license. I hung it at a Century 21. I was still a naval officer. So I was just
but if you have that background of like being in the Army or being in the Navy or whatever, and now you're a real estate agent, that's a really good.
That's a
nice niche.
If you know the benefits of, maybe there's specific benefits that people that served get when they purchase real estate or something like that, right? Like you could know the most about VA loans or whatever. That's it. Or like if you were
free college tuition.
Nurse,
I mean,
anything,
there's all kinds
right?
of great things.
Yeah, so there's lots of opportunity, and it gets back to trust. Trust is the asset.
Yeah.
Right. And then how do you protect that trust? It's like, well, I got to keep people up to date on my address book, or my database got to be up to date. I got to know where they are, right? Because that's part of the trust. That's how I deliver the trust typically, right?
And what are their other concerns? So like the more
you know about them, right?
Right.
And a relationship over time. This gets into this whole conversation about relationships. Relationships are not only come to me when you're ready to list or sell your property. No, I want to be involved
more
in
than that.
I want to in your conversation about life, because I want to help you figure out how to put real estate into the context of your life. Right. Because that's what I do. That's what I know the most about. That's why I learned about Picasso. That's why I learned about these different entities that are out there that offer you services. I try to weigh them for you, just like when I take you out and show you this investment property, or I take you out and show you this house, because I've already gone out and previewed this. I don't know if people do this anymore, because I've already gone out and previewed this house, and I've looked at it. Yeah. And I know, because I've already gone inside and I've already seen it. And that's what you get when you get me. And you trust it because I'm consistent. Right? And I always do what I say. And when I do that, that builds trust. And so I think it is kind of a good lesson for 2022, right? Is to realize that trust is the asset. And that there's going to be a lot of data generated, and under all is the data. And so we're going to see new ways for data to be wrapped and packaged. That's going to change the real estate industry, and things are going to start to emerge in 2022. And then what people will say, always say this about that, they'll say, wow, that happened overnight. Oh man,
as the rest of us sit here and laugh and go, yeah, it's been going on for a long time.
You were an overnight success. Yeah.
Right.
Right. That's how it happens. So so this is going to be a year, a lot of change. There's going to be a lot of funding. There's the political side of things. And for us, we believe that it's all about utilizing our greatest resource effectively, and doing it so that people have private property rights, but at the same time it's used effectively. And we know that there's
resource, the data.
Pardon?
What is the greatest resource? The data?
To be able to do this is the data. So you'll hear this phrase, it makes a lot of sense. It's like information to insight. We can't afford to guess anymore.
No.
Because we guess and we spend all our money on the guess, and it was the wrong guess, then we're in deeper trouble. So here's an example. It's real interesting. In San Diego, our SANDAG, our combined governments, got together and allocated something like $150 billion over the next 10 years. John Riley and I have differences, but they're going to change transportation. No, that's like $150 to change transportation in San Diego. It's a month now. So it's a big deal. And one of the things they were going to do is they're going to put like a 6-cent mileage tax. Now, people fought back, people went to hearings, people pushed back, and at the end they didn't do the mileage tax, but they still voted to allocate $150 billion to changes in infrastructure and changing of transportation.
That's a lot.
And it's going to change property values immensely. And you know what? And so the way that that SANDAG, the government entity, presented this to San Diego was, hey, we're the government, we're here, and we're using what we call data-driven technology. Now, most people have no idea what data-driven technology is. We're using data-driven technology, and we're going to do this, we're going to change this, and some people might not like it, but we're using, it's like saying to us, it's the science, and you have to trust it. And we're using data-driven, and we're going to make these changes. And we know he didn't like the 6 cents a gallon, but these are the types of things that are going to happen. Now, if you're somebody now, and maybe they'll get a lot of good at, and they'll do a lot of right things, but I guarantee you that a lot of stuff's not going to get done right. There's going to be political agendas. There's going to be misuse of a lot of funding. And if you're in the real estate, if you're a realtor, you believe in private property rights, you're going to want to, this is part of what you should know as a realtor. What are alternatives to the plans that are being offered? And if all we say is we don't like what they're doing, the government's offering, they're going to throw right back at you. Well, this is data driven.
Right.
So you need a data driven methodology yourself as a real estate entity, as a real estate organization, to be able to push back or cooperate equally.
Yeah, but that seems like a little bit overwhelming. So like what?
For who? I mean, somebody's got to do it.
Regular
real
people.
So what do you do as an individual? No, so as a realtor, so you go down, you join your association. It's got all kinds of different things that they're doing in the community. They're paying attention. You've got a government affairs committee. It takes, they do a lot of things. Contrary to some of the baloney you read in Facebook, they do amazing things that you could make list after list after list of things that people today are benefiting from. And they have no idea, and all kinds of volunteer time that's gone into this. So so the beauty of it is your volunteer time is paid back tenfold, because you learn things that you can use in your business. You meet people that can help you in your business. So when I see people complain about this online, I know they have no idea. Their scope of real estate is so limited. Right. And we know there are people like that.
I think that's most people, because like it's like anything, especially like you have your focus is to take care of your family, right? And you need a certain amount of money to do that, and you have to do these things to get a certain amount of money, and like that takes up the time. And so anything after that feels like it's more time consuming, and it doesn't yield what you need right now to take care of your family.
So so of critical importance is time management. And most people don't manage time very well. They don't know how. They've never taken a course. One of the reasons they don't do it well is there's no accountability. That pretty much your time, once you become an adult, you can find ways to hide your time. I think we had this discussion. Many ways, and still look like you're really productive, right?
Right.
And so
like making videos.
Yeah. No, so it's time management. We used to use a book, right? A time management, but really and truly, where every day you have a routine. So routine is a piece of success, where you do the same thing every day. First thing we would do, I was like planning in solitude. First thing I would do is I'd work out. I'd go swim. Back in those days, I'd swim a mile every morning at an indoor pool. I'd swim a mile, then I'd go to the real estate office. I'd get to the office at 7, and I'd sit down. I'd go through, these are the most important things in my life today. These are the things I have to do. These are the things, work out. I got to spend time thinking about what I'm doing. I have to support the people who support me. I have to support me. Then I said, no, I got that wrong. I have to first support me. Then I can support the people who support. I had this list of things, and every morning, it was religious. I would do them, and I would lay out what I had during the day, which were appointments or whatever. And now I would plan, and I would try to fill the book. I could tell you many times I'd like somebody to call me and they say, how's this day? I look at the calendar on that day, totally empty. And I think to myself, shoot, if I make an appointment there, it ruins my whole day.
Right.
So we all
this goes back to like the original thing that you were saying, which is like, you have to be strategic about your life. And if we know that in the future, commissions as a real estate agent are going to get compressed, like I think everybody thinks that's what's happening. I mean,
everyone knows that's coming down the line. Right.
So if that's happening, then and if you're reading books and business books, every book tells you to have multiple streams of income. Your life then has to be on purpose, which will trickle down until your day being on purpose. And I know, like for me, when I became better at my calendar, I actually had more free time.
Yep.
I got a lot more done, and I had a lot more free time. And I was like, oh, that seems opposite of what I thought was going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because you're purposeful.
You thought you were losing control.
Yeah.
Right.
But really, you're gaining control.
You gain control, a lot of control, like a lot. Rachel, what do you think about side hustles and this extra stream of income as an agent?
I think, you know, when I
Awfully
see,
quiet. That's very rare.
right, I know,
You feeling okay?
right.
Yeah.
No, I think when people have side hustles, you know, in terms of what I guess what you look at is what do people consider a side hustle? So,
Mhm.
you know, you see a lot of people that are agents that are peddling, you know, liquid collagen, shampoo, Pampered Chef, Mary Kay, you name it. Those, none of those are related to real estate. And I think it definitely takes away from the focus of what your job is. And
Mhm.
if I'm looking at it, if from a consumer standpoint, do I want someone who is, you know, if I'm looking for a realtor as a consumer, do I want someone who's truly plugged into real estate as a whole and is involved in many facets of real estate? Or do I want someone who's selling real estate, but they're also going to try and sell me, you know, dishes and and cosmetics and all that stuff out of the trunk of their car on the way out?
Mhm.
I think that dilutes the professional level of being a realtor. Um, so I, you know, I guess I can totally get behind the multiple streams of income when it comes to real estate in general, but I think they have to tie into real estate. So property management, you know, the financial planning piece, and anything that that revolves around that. If you can consult in some way to a builder, you know what I mean? Those are things that add to your portfolio instead
Or
of taking away from
politics. Get into politics.
it. Yeah, no, thank you. Jesus.
It's building expertise, right? In different
It's
areas.
absolutely, it's building expertise. I mean, my husband will ask me all the time, what are you doing on professional standards? Do you get paid for that? I go, no, I don't get paid for it. It's 100% volunteer. But I'll tell you one thing. I said I learned something every single hearing we sit on.
Mhm.
We have, you know, in-depth conversations about what's acceptable, what's not, you know, how do we fix this moving forward? None of those things are paid things. Governmental affairs. Jen, you said you were going to be on that, I think, next year.
Yeah.
That's a volunteer position too, but does it add to or take away from my field of expertise as a realtor? It 100% adds to it.
Saul, just as like some final thoughts, if somebody's thinking about, you know, 2022, they want it to be more purposeful, they want to start thinking about how can I become not only a better realtor, but also generate some additional revenue, where would they start?
Wow, that's a tough one. First of all, I would look at some type of time management. Maybe brokerage firms offer them. There are courses you can take, but really, and probably online, there are many ways to do this. But I mean, the first thing is to take this concept of time management very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're in it, particularly if you're in the real estate business, because your time is really what you sell. And you want to make the most use of it. And like you said, once you figure out how to do this, it becomes easier and easier because you find you actually
a lot easier to say no and say yes to certain things because you're clear.
Because you're very
well, and 99.9% of realtors, I think, don't. We're not a 9 to 5 going to the office and there's a clear start and a clear end to our day. We're all over the place.
We have to make it.
So you've got to be strict enough with yourself to be able to make that schedule and stick to it.
And I think there's going to be enough visible. There's always change, right? But it becomes visible at different paces. Right. I think there's going to be enough visible change this year for people to really start to think, you know, hard about the way their business might shift.
100%.
And be looking at we talked about some of these new ways to generate revenue from real estate sales or from partial real estate sales. Mm-hmm. What's going on there? And if for no other reason is you're going to learn about it. And at some point your customers are going to ask
about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And Jim, you asked about, somebody's going to ask you at some point in time, what do you think of virtual real estate?
Right.
If you're in the real estate business, if you say, oh, it's a scam or I don't know anything about it, that's not I want to be able to demonstrate expertise about it, right? Want to get, so in participating on committees at your association, it actually builds your credibility.
100%. Right? Absolutely.
And you know, things that you learn there, if you're managing an office, you're managing agents, you're working with agents, it's going to help you. It's going to reduce potential problems because you're going to see them before anybody else. If you're an agent, you're going to see things before other people would see them. You're going to know their problems and then think about real estate in the context of your life. Mm-hmm. And so what is your plan for 2022? But what do you really want to do in real estate? Where do you want it really to take you? If you've never really thought beyond this week or this year, then this is a good time to do it. And it's a good time to do it because it's changing so much around us so fast that it's
only going to get faster. I would say, like, if I was thinking about like what next steps would be, I agree with you. I also think that if that feels like a lot, maybe start of like looking and sourcing your customers. Where have they come from over the last couple of years? What are the other issues they're dealing with? And at least if you don't want to seek and find out information, understand who the partners are that have that information. Because to your point, Saul, we have the data, we're the ones that have the relationship, and there's customers are still going to ask. And if we don't know, at least be able to direct them somewhere
Absolutely.
to get the answer.
Right.
And then you can generally monetize that in some way without violating RESPA.
Yeah, well, also just go out and take pictures in your neighborhoods all the time. Because
get a drone.
Because at some point you're going to be able to load them in, and you're going to own that piece. And if it ever gets used again, you're going to be able to get paid for it. You're going to have intellectual property that nobody else has. And you say 10 years, I say, yeah, 10 years. That ain't a long time. And so if you're a real estate professional, this is what's your career? What are you looking at? If I were selling real estate today, if I were selling residential real estate today, I'd be on Nextdoor. I wouldn't be trying to sell anything. I'd be helping people. I'd be answering questions. I'd be saying, hey, did you see what happened at this part of in Allied Gardens today? Hey, did you see we had a traffic accident down here? Hey, we had this, and I'd just be out there. Same thing we do on Facebook.
Yep.
But in the people say, oh, I'm not going to have it. I'm telling you, you're going to do that because it's going to give you an engagement. And relationships are built on engagement.
It's organic engagement versus
it's just a different kind of engagement.
But as part of like time management, it's very easy to get like down the rabbit hole on there.
Oh yeah.
Like setting goals around that, right? Like I'm gonna do 5 responses. 5 responses should only take or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is, right? And
think
just
about
really
just something as simple as a like. Right. So, and remember, everybody believes it's going to get more virtual, right? As a matter of fact, Facebook changed its name. So they're thinking about something as simple as a like. If I like something, it doesn't that you post, it doesn't matter if anyone else sees it or not. I touched you. I engaged. And that engagement, that's what relationships are. These series of engagements. All of a sudden, we got all these ways that we can actually engage and touch many more people much easier. So I say in social media, engage with intention.
Yes.
Because every time, it doesn't take you much time, but every time in your mind, you're thinking about the person, and sometimes you're really interested, and sometimes it's an engagement. Right. And so be engaging. Use social media as an engagement tool and be purposeful about it.
Absolutely.
Those are some good tips. Rachel, what do you think would be some easy, simple ways to get started with all of this?
I'm a big proponent of the organic engagement, on the social media platforms. That's where I've actually been pretty successful in adding to my client list just from organic engagements alone. So if I'm a member of a bunch of different local,
they're interested in too.
Right. You know what people are interested in, you know what the concerns are. So I'm a member of a bunch of different, just local town, small groups or whatever. And it's funny because I have a friend from high school who's also a neighbor now, who I've helped with a bunch of things over the years. And the joke is, can we stump Rachel? There's a question someone has, well, try her because she'll know everything. So now it's the funny odd questions of, if you need this, go find her. She'll be able to tell you. Right.
I believe that.
I mean, and an attorney to litigate my home, my roof insurance claim. Who do I call? Call this guy. So but that also become the go-to person. So then when you become the go-to person for other random things, you kind of become the go-to person for it. And I would argue that all of these things are real estate related. They are related to your home. They're related to how you live in your home and how you use your home. So why not make that engagement and these are all people that I already know. So like Saul said too, you're touching them in just a small, minute way, but you can do it so much easier and a lot more effectively.
So your personal goal, if you sell real estate, if you're a realtor or a real estate professional, is you want to be in the center of the real estate conversation.
Exactly.
We used to say when we created Realtor.com and when we created the Realtors Information Network, the thought then was you wanted to be in the center of the transaction. And that actually was the buzzword, the phrase for a while. You want to be in the center of the transaction. Well, then in the late 90s, we realized, no, that's not what we do as realtors. No. It's not about if you wait till until the transaction, it's too late.
Right.
You have to be in the center of the conversation. Now, how do you get in the center of the conversation? Well, you had to join the PTA. You had to do the Little League thing. Social media has now changed engagement. And so we said this back in the 90s, we say it now, it's just got, you have more opportunities. You have to go to where people go. Where do they congregate? And you have to engage with purpose. You have to learn the different engagement tools.
Right.
And so learn how to communicate in that environment. And that's prospecting.
Right.
Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean that there's an ill intent. You know, you're doing it to build relationships.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
My
real-
first
and people
handful of clients.
Yeah, and people say it all the time. Real estate's a relationship business.
Contact
100%.
sport.
My right, that too. My first handful of clients, I got licensed when my youngest one had just turned 1. So I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we were part of a cooperative preschool. So a cooperative preschool, the parents take turns volunteering in the classroom. And then we also had a parent taught class where the parents went to the class with the 1-year-old, 2-year-old. That's where the first handful of clients that I had came from, because you're sitting around. Everybody is in a position now where they've had 1 or maybe 2 kids. They've outgrown their house. We're having organic conversations about real estate while playing with Play-Doh at the activity table.
Right.
This is not a hardcore sales position, sales tactic either. You're just sitting around having conversations. And how can I help you?
And so
Right.
trust is the asset.
Absolutely.
Right?
And these are all
Trust.
people
And-
that I still work with now.
And so people today, it's not about buying leads. It's like this whole
No.
idea. And yes, some people are going to set up machines and buy leads and sell 200, and that's okay. That's one way to do it. But to me, that's not the real estate business. That's real estate
No.
sales.
Right.
And
I've always maintained that we're not salespeople.
But you can buy those
for anything but a salesperson. There's nothing I'm going to do to make you love my house if you walk through it that's for sale.
Right.
There is nothing I'm going to do to make you love that house.
But if you
or
don't
to sell it
have
to
like
you.
a large sphere, I think doing some of these like buying leads or doing whatever is a good way to begin that relationship with trust. It's
Could
like,
be.
what do you do with it from there?
Yep, could be, because
Or
you got to
cold calling or
fill the funnel.
Yeah.
And there are many ways to fill the funnel.
And
so you try a number of different ways. You measure the results.
right.
And you
Track and measure. Oh shit, that's a whole nother video. So
Yeah. And you'll get things done.
I don't want to track and measure. I don't want anyway. Okay,
It's
Rachel.
math.
If people have a referral for you in Chicago or they have a
Yes.
question, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to reach me is by cell phone at 630-542-8688 or via email at rreal@dealwithreal.com.
Love it. And Saul, if people want to learn more about the data stuff that you and John are doing, what's the best way to get a hold of you? The best way to find out more about what you guys are working on?
TheDataAdvocate.com. TheDataAdvocate.com. You can reach me by email, Saul at bettercallsaul.realtor. You'll find me on LinkedIn, number of different places.
Everywhere. You're
And
everywhere.
what we do is we just try to lay the story out and help people build context, right? So with the we say text without context is pretext. And so that's what we do in the real estate industry, in the business. If you kind of think about it, you help people create a context, and that context is now going to change dramatically and quickly. And so if we can help.
So the best time to start learning all this stuff was yesterday. Today's the second best day.
Well, and take the time. I mean, right now we're kind of getting into, today we're recording, it's December 28th, but we're coming to the end of that kind of quiet time as real estate professionals too, where you've got a couple more weeks to kind of get your ducks in a row for the year, and take the opportunity to do that instead of hanging out and watching Netflix for the next 3 days or a week or whatever it is.
Always the week between Christmas and New Year is my plan.
Right.
And so I got into strategic planning many, many years ago. And then it was fine-tuned for me when I got involved in the board of realtors in San Diego and became the vice president and got included in the board's strategic planning. And that's when I really could see the strategic planning. I loved it so much, I started doing strategic planning, facilitating across the country. And my companies over the years, what I've done this week is we sit down and we go through the whole thing. We go through the vision and the mission and the strategic objectives and who's going to do what. Now, in my early days in real estate, I had a partner. So early days of a team, I had a partner, Tony Herrera. And Tony was a Hispanic man, and he was my dad's age. And every year, Tony and I would get together and we'd kind of do the planning, but we would always start before we did the planning he'd say to me, I want you to know what I want out of my life. And he was a retired Army officer. I want you to know, he had 5 kids. I want each of my children to have a house. And so that's why I'm still working. I'm a retired Army officer, but I want each of my children to have a house. What do you want? Now, at the time, right? And this was important that we align our visions.
Right.
of our lives. For him, it was, and I gained appreciation of that, right? Because working as partners and working together to know what each of our objectives were was a very important thing. And so that's a part of this planning process, right? So people should get involved in planning. And if you don't know about it, you can find information about this everywhere. I'm sure, Jennifer, you got it, vision, mission, strategic objectives, start with your values, right? And this is the time of year to do that. Take advantage of everybody else slowing down.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, with the real estate sales cycle is really like 90 days. So really it was October, but if you didn't do it, now's the time.
It's not too late.
At least do it now.
Right.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Saul, for being on this episode of Better Call Saul. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Saul.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
You too.